Optor stood waiting, dimly illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lighting, as the chaos of the last few hours was beginning to come to a head. All had been well and fine 6 hours ago. Optor had just entered his restorative trance before things began going awry, and then, with a series of crackling noises, the ship stuttered and then went quiet and dark. All systems, from the power plants to even the environmentals, had suffered a cascade failure and were offline. Not even the overlapping and redundant repair and restorative systems managed to endure the cascade's effects, leaving the ship a slowly chilling and freezing tomb, tumbling and floating through space adrift, and with no way of signaling out for help or for aid. Barely moments after the chaos had started, before Optor had even been able to rouse himself completely from his trance, a process that takes seconds at the most, Optor found his mind no longer in the shared mental space of his people, but instead he found he was in what seemed like a large room, with naught but one other, a tall and mighty being, nearly twice Optor's height. Without introduction, Optor knelt, for he knew that the being he was now in the presence of, it was one of the 10 molds from which his entire race was originally cast. Legends and beings of near mythological status, and they were simply known as the Primordial Preators. Said to be imbued with powers and abilities beyond that of normal Preators, created with far more than ended up being included in the general race's population. The beings spoke in quick, concise words, explaining the situation Optor now found himself in. There was a traitor on his ship, a threat so grave that if he did not find and take care of it before the flotilla of rescue ships made it to his location, their orders were to ensure the destruction of both ship and its crew. This traitor was well hidden, as even the Primordial could not tell who it was, even when directing his full focus on the ship to look at it in whole. However, most of the crew were able to be cleared of suspicion and were subsequently transported by the Primordial's power to their very destination. Less than 20 were left aboard the ship, not counting Lasara and Onka, who were obviously cleared of being suspects. They had 4 hours before the flotilla arrived, so, at a breakneck pace, Optor and company made their plans and began to hunt for the traitor in their midst. By the 9 and 4, welcome back to the library for this entry on the Primordial Preators, the forerunners and prototypes of the Preator race. I am the recorder, and I hope you enjoy this look into these beings of might and power in this entry of Intro to the Realms. Perceptive patrons, regular viewers, and of course, new guests of the library, we begin our look by detailing a bit more on the creation of the Preators. How, in the immediate aftermath of recovering the Expeditus Primus and defeating the avatar of the dead Daemon god Vanson trapped within its control room, Killian Skychild found himself the commander and responsible for this vast 10,000-mile-long vessel, still full of monsters and other inhabitants that had taken residence inside its hull for ages untold. Killian sought to solve this problem, as well as work on his greater goal for finding a method for his own people, the Crystons, to be able to properly procreate and endure as a species. To this aim, he brought together a council of the blessed flesh crafters and metabiologists in the realms, with names from the transcendent legend himself, the Analar Life Spinner, to the masters of such arts hailing from even other realities, who had come to the realms to escape the dangers of their native home. This group would labor and work, sharing their skills and talents in an effort to create a cadre of not only soldiers of preeminent skill, power, and ability, but also with minds capable of processing and acting on vastly forward information and in shorter time than any natural creature ever could. It is said there was only ever a limited number of these beings to be made, a few thousand at the most, but to create them, a framework or a blueprint was required. These blueprints were the Primordial Preators, who received the complete total of powers and options available for this nascent race. They stood taller than their descendants by nearly double, and in fact were nearly godlike in their might. However, to Killian, these primordials were only a theoretical from which his praetors were eventually crafted, as the council he had formed knew he would never have agreed with the creation of such monstrously powerful mortal beings. So they kept the reality of their existence unclear to the young godling, who was busy enough with not only other matters within the Praetor project, but those multiple issues arising from the recovery of the Primus itself. It was not until a few centuries later that the primordials would be discovered, and where the council had chosen to place them for safekeeping would be found by hunters exploring in space. A single planet orbiting a star of pure blue flame, which by its nature made it invisible to those of the divine bloods, and virtually undetectable to most sensors and scanners, with the star's light obscured by a thick cloud that envelops the system. This was the perfect place for them to be able to live and be, without bringing harm or threat to the realms, while providing them long-term protection from notice of those very wider realms. The discovery of the Praetors caused a deal of strife in the upper echelons of the gods, as Killian's efforts were not seen as proper or right by many of his fellow gods. The creation of a super race was viewed as an act of aggression and potential tyranny. These concerns had mostly been quelled by the time the primordials had been discovered, and brought to the attention of the gods, who were far less than pleased, thinking now that the truth of Killian's mad designs had finally been discovered. The absolute rage-filled reaction when Killian was made aware of not only the existence of the primordials, but they had been hidden from him, eliminated much of this doubt, and instead of bringing Killian to heel for trying to conquer the realms, they had to restrain him from attacking and perhaps even killing those who had aided in the creation of his praetors. The Skychilds do not take betrayal or deceptions very well, and have been known to go to incredible lengths to see scores settled. And with the personages involved, none were willing to see a war break out over the issue that this would cause. So a peace was enforced by the highest authorities of the divine. The primordials, being not only aware but accepting of the position they were now in, learning that they had not been abandoned by their maker, but kept from his knowledge, immediately presented themselves to Killian for his judgment, knowing that by doing this, they had a chance to serve a higher calling than just living in secret on some backwater world. Killian, for his part, took a great amount of time to speak and learn of these wayward children of his, and he found them to be, if anything, more loyal to the idea of the realms and its protection and growth than he could have ever dreamed. He accepted them as his personal aides in managing what was becoming an entire race, setting one to lead and guard each of the lunar praetors, those moons orbiting the expeditious ships of the realms, each a homeland of Praetor kind and a center of their industry and cultures. Those not so assigned serve as Killian's most trusted agents, able to deliver secure communications, deal with negotiations, and protect themselves from all but the mightiest of the gods. Since that point, they have been like shadows, guiding and leading for what little is needed for the wider realms and the Praetors alike. The powers and abilities of these primordials is a matter of vast conjecture, as they are known to possess any and all powers that have been seen within Praetor kind as a whole, although to a level of potency that is claimed to rival even gods. Additionally, there are rumors that they possess a vast number of powers beyond that found within their lesser kin, with some saying they are also capable of walking the paths of time itself. This is of course speculation. However, it would account for the rapidity that they are said to be capable of, having sightings reported being on both sides of the cluster within hours of each other. Standing around 15 feet in height, the base form of the Primordial Preators is said to be that of their more refined descendants, humanoid, muscular, and broad, at the scale of their 15-foot height. Where a normal Praetor can lift wagons and bend most bars of metal with little effort, there are few mortal things in the realms that can match the strength of the Primordials. It is said they are able to even snap a bar of star metal, unassisted by spells or boons. The amount of strength this represents is terrifying, and even as many of the gods could at best, perhaps, maybe, bend such a bar. In mental acuity, they are to their descendants what their descendants are to the common man, and they are capable of calculating inordinate amounts of information, with vast stores of knowledge, the full extent of which no one is quite sure of. In the Council of Creators that were aiding Killian, those that took the step of making the Primordials a permanent reality instead of just a temporary measure, each had added their own set of secret lore and knowledge into the mix, what they thought might be required for the duties of such beings of power. Many of this group could see how the winds were actually blowing, that the Praetors would not just be a small personal guard for Killian and the Primus, but a race. And they needed the Primordials to be ready, just in case. Thus they had secreted them to their home where they were eventually discovered. After being united with and included into the service of Killian, the 10, as they are simply called, set themselves to work. And that work continues to this day, often taking care of Praetor-related issues in rapid and decisive ways, and to their credit, they have yet to be proven wrong or lacking in logical or legal grounding for their actions. Before we return to Optor and his impending doom, I want to thank you one and all, my perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and of course, new guests of the library, for your interest and your support, not only of Gryphon's Library, but of the realms of Jam'mar. It means so much. Thank you. I hope you now know a bit more about both the Praetors and these strange beings that predate and surpass them. We shall, of course, learn more in future entries, so long as interest is made known. So let your voice be heard in the comments below or by any other means. Until you next make your way back to the library for your next entry of Intro to the Realms, I have been, as always, the Recorder. And by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. Back to the story, shall we? The Primordial Preator had visited 3 hours ago. and in the pale emergency lights since then, Optor had found and dealt with the threat. A parasitic subversion and control organism of malign design and intelligence. It had killed 3 separate hosts before it was caught, hopping from one to another to avoid detection and discovery. In the end, its need to escape with the knowledge it had attained became its downfall. It now found itself sealed in an escape pod that was anything but, with all the power meant for engines instead forming and keeping fields and walls of energy and sealing to keep the creature still. The being had proven to be able to regrow from a piece no larger than a splatter of blood, so containment was the only option. Now Optor prayed that the Primordial was still watching and telling the oncoming ships not to fire, but to assist. It was a long time in silence on the bridge as Onka, Lasara, and Optor, along with Tranos, waited to see their fates. With the remaining crew in the one section of the ship, they had been managed to power up and keep systems in place. They had scrounged and found every battery on the ship to do it, but the crew would be able to live for a few weeks with the power they had scrounged. There was no gravity, warmth, or even much light on the bridge, save for the orbs of soft flame and other energies that Onka was juggling as part of his daily meditations. A mix of murmured chant and dance, using his strange form of elemental manipulation as yet another focus and component of the task. Soon enough, with the sound of lightning, a repair and recovery team of Preators translocated onto the bridge. After a few tense moments, confirmations, and a few scans, the remaining crew was taken off the ship, and Optor and his agents were placed on a private transport for an immediate meeting on the Luna Primus. The organism would be taken by specialized teams to be studied, and most likely never to be seen again. With assurances the vessel would be brought in and repaired, ready for him and his crew as soon as they were ready to make way, Optor and his agents were sent off. He would get his ship back. After he had his meeting, of course. Only then would he be allowed back to his ship. As the transport made its way to the Luna, Optor wondered what disaster had just been averted, and where it had come from. Tranos' snore nearly woke himself up. Lasara smiled and Onka seemed unsettled, simply muttering that this was not the end of it. Optor, for his part, feared the old man was right, and this was but the beginning of a dark time for the realms. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.